Welcome, everyone. I'm Marilyn Barger. I'm the Executive Director of FLATE, the Florida Advanced Technological Education Center, located in Tampa, Florida, or we're housed at Tampa. We serve the state of Florida. And I'm so glad you're all here at High Tech. I think many of you have seen me up at the podium before, but welcome again. I'm really excited about this session. It happens that the chair of my National Visiting Committee, which all NSFAT centers have, lives in the area, Mr. Terry Iverson, and he was very excited about High Tech coming to his neighborhood and wanted to do something special with his colleagues here in the area. So he's brought his panel together, and he's going to talk about manufacturing with this group that we have in the front. And I'm going to just turn it over to Terry and thank him so much for bringing our panelists here, and I hope everybody enjoys what they have to say.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Obviously you know who I am, so I'm going to take this time to basically say we're going to ask questions of the panel, and as we go through and they answer the questions, if you have a follow-up question, please raise your hand, and I encourage you to do so. But I want to have the panel first introduce themselves, so we'll start with ladies first.
I'm Peg Lee. I'm the president and professor of English at Oakton Community College in Des Plaines.
Good morning. My name is Brian Albrecht. I serve as the president of Gateway Technical College. It's located in Kenosha, Wisconsin, but we serve Kenosha, Racine, and Walworth counties. Our college serves around 25,000 students annually. It's a 2-year technical college with a focus on workforce development.
Good morning. I'm Warren Young. My company is Acme Industries. I'm chairman. My company does precision machining of medium to large parts for parts that go into locomotive engines and power generation, mining trucks, and oil and gas applications. We're located in Elk Grove Village, and we've got about 220 employees.
Thank you very much. All three of these people. A little louder? Okay.
Yeah.
If you can bring the microphones closer to each one of you. Thank you very much. All three of these people are very near and dear and close personal friends of mine, and they're also experts in the field in each of their respective industries. Just out of curiosity, could you raise your hands, those of you that are educational sector in the audience? Okay, how about industry? Are there any industry? Okay.
We're in the minority.
Yes, there's 3 of us, so that's a start. Basically, when I came up with the thought to approach Marilyn on this, one of the things that all of us up here feel is very important is the connection between industry and the educational sector as it pertains to manufacturing technology and manufacturing education. So I'm going to start off with some questions, and I'll try to direct them either to the educational side with Brian and Peg, or the industry side being Warren. So let's start off by saying, on the educational side, what is the biggest challenge in putting together a manufacturing program at your technical college?
All right, very good. I'd be happy to do that. So it's a great question, and I just want to first thank Marilyn and Terry for bringing this opportunity for all of us to get together, because it's important that, as Terry mentioned, that we hear back from you as well. It's the only way that we're going to continue to grow and improve our own programs. But so great start to the question. Biggest challenge for, I think, me personally, and maybe for our college, is to define what manufacturing is. So when we think about manufacturing in the region of the state that I live in, it was really grounded in the automotive sector. So it's manufacturing in the mindset of people thinking of welding and machining. But as we know, manufacturing can be so much more. So it might be food and beverage manufacturing, it might be biopharmaceutical manufacturing, it could be very highly specialized in Swiss screw micro machine manufacturing. And I think really trying to identify where the skill sets are and how they align to those manufacturing needs within your community is probably the first and foremost thing that we have to do constantly at our college. And as we think about what traditionally 103 years worth of educational opportunity at Gateway, that's how old we are, manufacturing being one of the first programs founded in 1911, it's very different today in 2014. Have we evolved fast enough to be able to provide the workforce under that same name of manufacturing? So now we look at additive manufacturing and 3D prototyping and It's just a very different context to the skill sets that students are required to have as they go into this industry cluster. So our biggest challenge, I think, is really trying to define what do we want manufacturing to look like for our community, and how can we at our college be able to diversify our investments and our interest over those decades of already embedded curriculum to become more relevant to today's needs for manufacturing.
And I think we have a very much different challenge because we're a comprehensive community college on the North Shore suburbs of Chicago, where everyone wants their kid to go to Harvard and nobody wants them to go into a manufacturing job. So we are blessed, though, by people like Terry and some of the manufacturing owners in our district who really bring a commitment to engaging our students. And to that end, we've worked with, Martha Heck is in the audience, and my guru dean, Bob Simpolsky, is also in the audience. And we've worked very hard to bring students from the level of junior high to high school through some programs at the college. And the biggest challenge, believe it or not, besides the students, the manufacturers are, crying for the engagement. The students get interested, but the parents are the ones who have to be convinced. And we have to work with the college counselors. And I think that, Terry, you've seen that over and over again the last kind of group gather we had with David Pattison was a really good example of it's changing a mindset. We're a community college. 70% of our students indicate that they really want to transfer, but it's surprising how many of them end up in manufacturing related fields once they have the exposure.
Tara, if I just add to that, Peg hits on a number of key elements. One of the challenges for us, not only trying to understand what manufacturing looks like in our community, and just a real contextual example of that is we were recently trying to supply welders for a local company, and so we did a survey of what the skill sets were needed. Well, it turned out there were 7 different disciplines within welding that they were expecting us to be able to deliver, and we had 2 or 3 of them that we could probably manage, so we were never going to meet their expectations. And then to compound that challenge, we didn't have the instructor capacity to deliver all of those different variations of welding because we hire someone what we think is welding or where the enrollment is going to drive welding. So, instructor capacity is an issue, defining what within an industry sector the skill sets are, and then communicating that in a way that you're going to be able to embed that into a curriculum and actually challenge ourselves to refine our curriculum so that we have enough enrollment and not be too specialized that we can't afford or sustain enough enrollment to keep a program strong. So we've got some unique elements of the way education works: student interest, the ability to transfer those skills, whether it's a general education transfer or a specific technical transfer, and then having the faculty and staff and the investment that we need to make in faculty and staff in order to maintain their skill sets, while at the same time thinking about what are the new faculty that we need to bring in order to be able to grow our programs.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that we'll talk later is the differences in the 2 states between Illinois and Wisconsin, and we'll come back to that. Warren, what do you think, how do you think that as an industry partner that you can assist and help community colleges?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I'm encouraged by what's been happening in the last few years. But I think we are having the effect of maybe 10 or 20 years worth of negative things going on in regards to manufacturing that's caused a lot of people to believe that there's no career there. And that's parents, that's students, and it isn't that anybody's trying to say something bad about manufacturing, but there's the perception that's built up that all the manufacturing's gone to Asia. We don't do it in this country anymore. That it's maybe old and dirty, and it's just repetitive work on an assembly line. So what's been absent, and I see that that's now starting to change, is the promotion of manufacturing careers. And it has to start at the junior high level, at the high school level, community college. Terry and his has worked hard at this, and we need others that will promote it And we're getting some good things going, like, for instance, Harper College has a summer camp. And these kids are 11 to 14. Now, some would say, well, that's way too early, but that's when you got to get them started thinking about where they might want to go. And the problem is most of them don't have a clue about what manufacturing companies do, and how could they, unless they walk through and say, oh, gee, that looks pretty exciting. That could be good. So part of what we need to have here, and we're getting more of it, is the engagement of manufacturers that will come and work with the different educational groups, whether that's at the high school or community college. And there's just a great thing that we can work together and develop the kind of programs we need. But manufacturers can't sit on the sidelines, which is too often we've done, and then whine about the fact we don't have people coming through the pipeline. And it isn't something we turn a switch on and say, well, I've got a great big lump of business that I need, and so we'll solve it overnight. We don't do that. And we can't do it by ourselves. That's why it's good that we're working together, because there really is and can be a manufacturing renaissance going on right now. But my company and others won't get it done if we don't have the workers coming into the workforce, not only to do a new business, but also to replace the attrition we have of retiring workers.
Yeah, Warren and I have talked. The average age in manufacturing is 55. I'm 55, so I'm the average in terms of age, and that's not exactly a stable workforce when you're at that level going to the future. Are there any questions based on Bob?
I think the stigma that manufacturing faces might be part of the general problem that STEM has. As somebody who went into STEM areas, it was always self-evident to me why STEM was important. I didn't feel I had to market it to anybody. By the way, I went into math, which does need some marketing. In general, what has happened recently is that if we don't market, our students just have too many pieces of information coming from them. I mean, their phone is constantly giving them one thing or another from the web. If we want to draw people into it, we have to have that type of marketing savvy, have the manufacturing days, have the evenings for the parents, because they need as much explanation as the students do.
Absolutely right. And the thing is, it can be an exciting, well-paid career and engaging. What's a crime is people going through other pathways and coming to the end of their educational pursuit to find that there's no need for whatever they've been trained for. That's the crime.
I think that leads into another point that I'd like to ask the panel about, and that is, what are your opinions and suggestions of the European model for apprenticeships, and what could and should we do in the U.S.? That's for any of the three of us.
I can just comment a little bit. This last year has been the year of apprenticeship for Wisconsin. Our governor has made that statement. Pretty strong investments in apprenticeship. And I just want to acknowledge Debbie Davidson, the Vice President for Workforce and Economic Development. Gateway hosts the State Apprenticeship Office for Southeast Wisconsin, and we grew from 49 apprentices to 220 apprentices currently, and it continues to grow. So the model, I think, works, and if you can combine and blend the learning and earning together, I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. It's been sort of dormant for maybe a decade or so, but it's really becoming revitalized as a result of what we all know, the skills shortage. So how do we take the 55-year-olds and become mentors now to bring new people into the pipeline? Wisconsin also has a program called Youth Apprenticeship, so while you're in high school you can participate in an apprenticeship program and have those hours count toward your adult registered apprenticeship, so there's a pathway that's being developed. Many states have co-op programs and internship programs. We also have that available for us. But apprenticeship for, I think, Wisconsin is starting to really pick up and develop its own identity again. And it's ironic, it's 100 years old. In fact, Wisconsin's apprenticeship program started with Gateway Technical College in 1911, the same time our college started. So it's not a new idea, but it's been revitalized, I think, with a lot of the concepts that still work today.
I think it would be important to define what you mean by an apprenticeship program. The old definition, and maybe there's a new one that I'm not aware of, was you're going through 3 to 4 years of study, hands-on theoretical stuff as well, and at the end of that route you are able to make a mold, make a die, be a master machinist, and there's still a need for some of that kind of skilled labor. But a lot of manufacturing doesn't need that level, and what I would, for us, I think is more appropriate to use the words internships, co-ops, where they're getting a lesser amount of skill, but there's still a lot of skill to be gained. But you know, it kind of depends on that definition of apprenticeship. What do we mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's changing. I mean, I was at a meeting with Harper's Maria Coons downtown on the apprenticeship program and the revitalization of that nationally. And I do think it is changing. I think the definition is probably going to have to change. But did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious. The apprenticeship program is all needs a little more than revitalizing the name. I agree with you that it's probably doesn't work because the completion rate in apprenticeships is very, very low. It's too long. I'm expressing my opinion. 20 years of education experience. It's too long, and it's very difficult that when the labor market changes and they become unemployed, since employment is one of the requisites of the apprenticeship, it makes it impossible for those people to complete. So when your question initially was the European model and what can you learn, and I can see, and I was discussing with a colleague a few minutes ago, we were bringing some European students to learn from how great we are, and I think sometimes we need to go to Europe and learn a little bit about how they are doing things. I am not sure that we can just bring back a model that was working 100 years ago because industry then required that type of training. And as this gentleman said, and as you mentioned before, manufacturing has changed dramatically. And we're talking about technologies that do not require 4 years of working and going to school 2 days a week, because that is not the model that works in high technologies that use micromachining, biomedical devices, etc. So I think we need to completely reconstruct the concept of apprenticeships and see what works, not go back to a model that is being antiquated. And I'm fighting that at our college because I see that we try to keep them going, the electrical, the construction, etc., the mechanical, but the completion rate is ridiculously bad.
I think the challenge, well said. I think we need to, Marilyn?
Could you summarize? We couldn't really hear too well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. I
the-
could have been shorter if I knew.
Yeah, I
Sorry
think
about that.
in summary, I think the European model isn't totally applicable in today's world in the U.S. And to follow on that, one of the things that I think is that our culture in the U.S. is so dramatically different. But I think those of us in the industry want to at least point to that as a way of changing or trying to change our culture, but at the same time redefine what an apprenticeship should be. And I think the point was very well made.
Terry, if I could just comment, because my comments were more in favor of apprenticeship. So let me just share a little bit of insight to what I've heard so far. Apprenticeship is not a new model coming back. It's a model that's always been evolving. So apprenticeship is actually a credit-based program. It takes longer to become a teacher than it does to become an apprentice. So when you start comparing one occupation versus another, you have to be a little bit careful about, is it the time that we're looking at or the competencies that we're looking at? And there are many new areas. So we have apprenticeships in nursing, we have apprenticeships in water treatment, we have apprenticeships in a lot of new and innovative ways that I think are helping to rethink the European model of apprenticeship. And right here in Chicago, actually, there's a huge initiative, the German Skills Initiative, where Europe is investing a lot of money in colleges throughout the United States to engage in an apprenticeship model to help foster German-based companies in the United States. And so I think we have to be aware, and at least and for many people, I have 2 of my brothers are apprentices, and they are doing very well. So the pay range can vary depending on what your skill level is and the amount of time that you invest in any occupation, whether it's in initial training in carpentry or whether it's becoming a 3rd grade teacher. Those 5 years are an investment in your future.
Well, and there's also a movement in a lot of different states. It depends on the state you're in too. I mean, Wisconsin has a very long history of European influence, but there is a resurgence in stackable credentials to augment something like apprenticeship programs. Let me move on to another question. Let's go back to, this is for all of you. Do you believe that recruitment is a significant challenge for enrollment in technical fields? And what strategies do you know that you're employing that actually work?
I can start with that one because it is a big problem. And I think one of the strategies is, and it fits in with the comments that we've heard so far, it's the issue of engagement. When you talk at kids today, Bob's point about, they're engaged in so many other ways. You have to capture their imagination. And one of the strategies that I think has been most effective for us is the Manufacturing Expo, where this last year we've had 27 companies not just come and talk to the students from our area high schools, but invite them into their places of work. And I think another very effective, and that's the hands-on stuff. And people, from teachers to counselors to parents, say, I didn't know that's what was happening in manufacturing. And it's so fascinating. And there's a rock star program, Jeremy Bout's program on, what's it called, the Edge Factor. Oh my God, if you haven't Googled that, do it. It speaks to students who are interested in video games, what you can do with the tooling and design background that he had, that he realized was needing a boost for his own psyche, and he transformed this. I think that the strategy of engagement with the manufacturers, it's a logistical nightmare. I don't know how people do it. Imagine getting 500 kids in from high schools and then out from the college to the manufacturing venues. And it is so powerful. Martha and Bob have a session this afternoon on the nanotech version of this. But I think it is a very appropriate strategy, and it's a successful strategy. It needs to bear itself out in enrollments, and that's coming.
Yeah, the Manufacturing Expo that Pegs Oakton has been doing for, I think, 5 years now. And the people up in Milwaukee, I've talked to them at Milwaukee Area Technical College, and they've started something called Heavy Metal Tour, but they weren't taking people out into the factories, and now they're starting to do that as well. Are there any other, time for another question from the audience? Yes.
For the people like yourself, Terry, in the business side, how do you want to see the colleges engaging with you? Step by step, who do you want to contact? How do we contact? How do we reach out effectively, I guess, in a value proposition, besides calling you and asking for a check?
Okay. Well, different companies can help different ways, and I'm going to direct this to Warren too. One, people like myself can get involved and try to be an advocate for the young people and for the parents and et cetera. I think the industry members also need to inform and educate people at the college, whether it be guidance counselors or instructors or administrators, of what the current technology and the current climate is for manufacturing, whichever segment it might be. And then, of course, there's other companies that can financially give as well. But I think people that surround your college, or whoever they may be, there needs to be a concerted effort to reach out to them and kind of call them out on that we need your help. And I think as time goes on, you'll find more people willing to help if asked. Warren?
I think there's a couple different models for this. One is a passive model, maybe on the basis of manufacturers, but ones that will, and there are a lot of them out there, if you call them to the table and ask them for their input, they're ready and willing to be there. An example of this was a few years ago, Harper invited me to be a panelist at their manufacturing day or whatever, and so I went, and at the time we were trying to hire a bunch of people, and I was whining about not being able to find them. And before I left the place that day, I had the president saying, well, I'm going to have a manufacturing task force, would you serve on it? So you get what you deserve, I guess, in that sense. But I got drawn into the cause, and this was a very good environment because they were really interested in the input, and I realized that what they needed was more engagement of manufacturers. And well, why don't you have the program? Well, we used to have this program, but we don't have it anymore because students stopped coming through it. Well, was that because the students did get a sense that there was a job on the other end of this training? And if that's what you need, they said it was, we can make sure that that's given to your students. So it was a partnership. We helped them develop a program that would, we thought, provide that startup training. It wasn't an apprenticeship program, but for my sake, didn't need to be. At the same time, you can't take somebody who's completely green, put them in front of a $500,000 machine, running a part that's $12,000 at the raw material before you start working on it. You just can't do that. You've got to have some amount of skills, and to accelerate, how do I get that as quickly as possible? And the fact that we can get some partnerships going, I'm now part of if you're in the Chicago area, you might have heard the Golden Corridor, but that's a region on either side of I-90, but we call it a partnership, and we're trying to work with our educational partners, whether that's Oakton or Harper or Palatine High School or Up Grove or whatever, so that we can work together. How can they scale up their programs? How can we be more engaging, take more interns and encourage that, and then support, if we need to, this recruiting into the high schools and even junior highs to manufacturing is a great career. So we're trying to work across those three things, because no one can work as a silo of, I'm just going to do the marketing, I'm just going to do the training, I'm just going to be in manufacturing. We need to work together, and I see some really good signs of what's happening now.
Terry, I might just comment. I think that's so important what Warren said, because as we're talking about the need for manufacturing, there's probably a group across the hall talking about the need for IT specialists.
Right.
And there's a group across town talking about healthcare. So there's whole effort of how do you engage with business and encourage young people to go into the fields that you want to. You have to be very aggressive. So we recruit our business partners. I personally spend at least one day a week in a business explaining what we do, because even though they might have been in our community for 40 or 50 or 60 or 100 years, we've changed and they've changed. Maybe we haven't spent enough time understanding what has happened in all of those changes and re-engaging new people. I found that most people want to support education, but we have to make sure that they find a way to do that. So bring them in, have the conversation, share what the excitement is around why you would like those partnerships to happen in your home schools, in your communities, but you've got to be real aggressive and take the time to go out and do the recruitment of the business partners just as much as you're recruiting students.
How Peg and Brian, how would you describe your best industry partnership for either of your colleges, as a follow-up to that?
I'm going to say that, our biggest programs are in the vocational area, in healthcare. We have a manufacturing center that, I'll tell you an interesting story of the partnership. We had Stratum Global give us a huge RFID set of stuff and built a program with us in curriculum, and nobody came. It was really, really hard to attract students, and we had to scale it way back. On the other hand, I think the most impressive one right now is the nanotech program, which it's really a public-private partnership that's located in the old Searle building in Skokie, and it's funded by the Chicago Community Trust, by the Village of Skokie, and by some of our partners in the actual equipment in nanotechnology. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because there's going to be a session on it this afternoon. And I mean, the biggest is NSF. I mean, what would we do without them? And we started off with the NSF relationship basically in undergraduate research, and it branched out into, well, the whole ATE, and Bob's doing supply chain. What's the matter with this
It must be a satellite that goes over.
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, yeah.
It's solid.
Yeah.
It's voice activated, so
Yeah.
it needs to be a little closer. It's voice
Okay.
activated.
Okay.
Bob, would you add to that?
Well, we've been fortunate to get a number of NSF-funded activities. One of them right now is the National Center for Supply Chain Technology Education, which we were brought into because of our RFID experience, as well as our ability to do robotics and mechatronics. And then the Nanotech initiative is for training high school and community college faculty on the use of our equipment and to have them access it remotely so that their students can have this as a regular topic in their classroom without them having to invest the kind of money that it takes to outfit such a lab.
It's the Orange Initiative, right?
I'd like to take this opportunity to field another question from the audience. Martha?
Just a comment really. I think what you were speaking to before, perhaps the most important component is having someone who understands business speak and education speak. Because I found they initially seemed to be mutually exclusive goals. Business wants us to train kids for their business. Educators, I work with 9 high schools, we don't see that as our job at all, right? Our job is to create educated kids. So, but it's very easy to make those mutually compatible goals when we realize how things work. But some of it's just understanding one another's language. For example, I frequently hear from manufacturers, kids can't do the math. So they insist legislatively and others, kids need more math. And I have to talk to them and say, that translates to calculus to a high school educator. You don't need calculus, you need the math we're teaching in career and tech ed. So help us, speak the same language and accomplish what we really need to accomplish. And then getting kids into the business and industry it makes all the difference. It really does.
As a follow-up to that, I'd like to ask some of the educators in the audience, are the schools being measured in a different fashion than they need to be measured? That would be a question I would ask of you. Any answers on that?
I would just opine that look at the controversy right now over the Common Core and the impact of the discussions about that Common Core. Does the Common Core have a good intent? Yes. Is it being translated well? No. I think it has a lot of deficiencies. But I think what we're seeing, we're in the middle of this landscape where what there is to know changes so fast. What there is to know doubles every 180 days. If you translate that into the equipment that's used in manufacturing, if you translate it to the curriculum, how are students going to learn what they need to know? And how are teachers going to know what they have to teach? And once you get a very expensive piece of equipment into a business industry, who's going to teach people how to use that? That's the need for the partnership that we're seeing in nanotechnology. But I think that the rate of change, the scope of needing to keep up and retrain not just the teachers, but the people who are in the workplace is enormous. It's one of the challenges that we have. And when we get to the state, the issues of state funding and state rules and regulations, when we hire a full-time faculty member, which you really need to develop and promote and create a program, after 3 years, that full-time faculty member is a tenured faculty member. We have them for life, but they may be obsolete. That is a real challenge.
Warren, let me.
No, I was going to say the one issue that's really come up nationally is certifications, nationally recognized certifications. So that's a way of aligning curriculum and back to the education speak versus the business speak. So if you can take a program and align it to a NIMS or to an AWS or something, it shows a quality check in terms of what you're delivering. So we're seeing much more alignment so that we are delivering what the businesses want.
I might just comment on that. I think you're absolutely right. In fact, a couple of handouts went around. Hopefully everybody got one. One is on our certification partnership nationally. 200 colleges are now involved in the National Coalition of Certification Centers. But So 93 programs at Gateway offer an industry credential. So it's important to get your associate degree, but it's equally important to get your industry certification. So we talk to our students about that unique niche that's going to differentiate yourself from the other hundreds of students that are graduating in the same exact program with the same exact title from schools all over Northern Illinois and Southeast Wisconsin. So what's going to be unique and different when Warren calls you in for an interview, and it's usually that industry credential, that you've had some industry experience and you've been able to validate that in different ways. And I think it's really important. The questions start out, what are the most unique partnerships, or what adds value to the partnerships? And it is that combination of trying to understand where is the common link, and I'll just share one. We have 230 different training agreements right now, so we consider those partnerships. We have advisory committees, I'm sure you all do. We consider those partnerships. But we also have strategic partnerships, which actually add value to the corporate bottom line, and we get invited to the shareholders report at Snap-on Incorporated, and it's listed in their shareholders report that Gateway Technical College is a strategic advantage in the education market. And the reason for that is because we've been able to have those conversations around what are the deficiencies in your business strategy, and what can Gateway and other community colleges do to help address that strategic advantage for you. And that's why the investment flows this way. That's why the support is. We had the same deficiency. We had an automotive program that did not teach the latest technology in diagnostics. So we used the platform of diagnostics. Snap-on had a tool. They didn't have a training system. We had a training system without a tool. Wow, if we could marry those two, we might be able to do something really unique. And we currently have 18,000 people certified in that tool. So you have to have that conversation to find out where that common brand is.
So Terry, let me build on a couple of those comments. I think that we need to look outside the models we've been used to on this and see the possibilities. Recently, I took a tour of Central DuPage Hospital, and the CEO of that hospital was explaining how hospitals over time will become less part of the healthcare, and distributed healthcare will become more. Well, what about if we did that on training? You know, these institutions, and I welcome them getting some equipment so they can give hands-on training, but they don't have enough money that they can spend to give the kind of equipment that the manufacturers have and use. But I was talking about my HR executive in preparation for this thing, and we realized that, you know, it's short of being able to get enough people coming through our door to do the work that we've got now to do, we've got to turn to in-house training. You know, we've got the machines that we could train on. We've got a classroom. We could use there are available software that is online training for this. Well, what we don't have is an instructor. Well, what if you know, you had more of a distributed model for somehow, they're hard to find, but instructors that could be your agents that would go out and train in the manufacturing environment. You know, there's just so much work that needs to be done there, and you know, can we work together to find a way to bridge that? Because people have the equipment, they want the people to be trained on, they'd work with a thing if they could just find that helping hand.
Just to kind of, yeah, I think Warren's absolutely right, and I keep referring to Debbie, and maybe you should just stand up, but Debbie's whole division is on customized training. So she has a team of instructors that are deployed out to the workplace and provide training right on site. And where there is not capacity on site, then we have a center that employees can come to, and it's specialized to the needs of that particular company.
Are you coming down into Chicago?
How many, Debbie, how many,
Pass cards out.
how big a staff do you have?
We have 9 faculty members with specific expertise, and they never teach on a campus. They only teach out of business and industry through customized training contracts for service. And most colleges have that capability. They may not have dedicated faculty, but they use their manufacturing faculty, and they share that with the academic division. So the center that we added on to is our customized training flexible manufacturing lab, which is typically for workforce training. So like Brian said, if the company doesn't have the capacity, it doesn't have available equipment because you're running all the time, then we can offer that training at our center.
Well, part of the Golden Quarters activity is to try to encourage good practices to be scaled up. You know, we're not out there criticizing anything. Whatever is going on is great, but it isn't enough.
Right.
You know, if we need 1,000 workers or whatever number, you know, and you're doing 10, God bless, but, you know, how do we scale it up?
And we do it all 3 shifts. So we have instructors that teach from 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. to cover the
Wow.
shifts that companies have.
Send some down to Elk Grove Building.
Yeah. I think some of the things, a couple points to make. Wisconsin has about 17% of their workforce in manufacturing. Conversely, Illinois has about 12% of their workforce in manufacturing. And you can compare those numbers to numbers in other states around the country. So, you know, in Indiana, I think 16%. So, you know, we live in a manufacturing hub. The one thing that I wanted to ask is, with the Illinois and Wisconsin differences, what are the state guidelines in terms of financial support to acquire equipment, and the difficulties and the struggles in Illinois or in Wisconsin? Could you talk to either one of those?
Yeah, I can start, maybe Peg can finish up, but Wisconsin's a little bit unique in that we have public taxing authority based on a local board. So there are 16 colleges like Gateway throughout the state of Wisconsin, all defined by geographic boundaries of counties. Each college has its own governance board. That board has authority to impose local taxes. So about a third of our funding comes from the state based on the number of students you serve, so the number of FTEs. Currently, Gateway is the 4th largest college in Wisconsin, so we generate a lot of money based on the students that we serve. A third comes from the students, fees and tuition. Tuition is set by the state, so we don't really have control over that. It's the same in Milwaukee and as it is in Racine, as it might be in Green Bay. And then a third on the local property tax. So each community can increase that investment or decrease that investment. Now I will say with a caveat that since Governor Walker took office, that eligibility has been frozen. So we maintain the same level of property tax that we had even 2 years ago, but we've increased the amount of state investment. So we have not lost any money. We've actually gained money in investments under the governor's proposals and changes that he's made. So for equipment, the colleges also have a borrowing authority. So it's up to the local boards to decide how much they would like to borrow in order to pay for equipment. Gateway borrows $13 million a year. About half of it goes towards our equipment, and half of it goes to maintain our labs. We could, you know, next week say we want to borrow $15 million. So we base that on where we think our community will be able to support the borrowing, because we do have to pay that back at some point. But it gives us flexibility to be adaptive to the changes. So if something's happening in manufacturing, we can quickly ramp up a program. If healthcare is in a need, we can ramp up a program there. So it gives us a little bit of leverage to be able to serve our community as quickly as possible.
Peg, what are the differences in the state of Illinois?
Well, the funding formula is more honored in the breach than the observance. Let me say that. We supposedly have a third from the state, a third from tuition, a third from property taxes. The reality is that the only thing that we have control over is tuition. And property taxes for our district are stable, but they're capped at 3%, or whichever the rate of inflation, whichever is lower, the rate of inflation. So we have high valuation, but of course in the housing crisis we had a devaluation. So our rates, the value of people's houses went down and their property taxes went up because everybody was raising rates as much as they possibly could. The state has defaulted on its payments for years. I think we now get about 6% from the state instead of 33% from the state. And I think they're about 5 months behind right now. So we're always juggling. There isn't a lot of flexibility. 80% of our budgets, I presume yours are too, are salaries and benefits for personnel, because it's a service organization. So where do we get money for equipment? We allocate. We do have redistributed federal funds through the Perkins, and it still came through this year. But I mean, Bob will testify, it's always a fight among different areas, and some people are very skilled in proposing what they need, and some are not so skilled. But we do. I mean, to Warren's point earlier about we have the space, we have the equipment, we just don't have the teachers. What we've done is really look to partnerships where we can take advantage of people's space and equipment and provide what is ours to provide, which is the teaching expertise. And that's worked out especially in the healthcare areas, not so much in manufacturing.
We have about 2 minutes before we're done, so I'd like to field at least one more quick question from the audience.
We're understandably focusing on the technical and hard skills. This is maybe more of a Warren and Terry question, but what about the soft skills, creativity and innovation skills? Are those something your companies look for or would appreciate?
Yeah, there's several questions that were answered, but you just asked one of my questions, and yes, absolutely. We try to get involved in a lot of internship programs. I think we're involved in 5 right now, and one of the main reasons is because of the soft skills that are needed. They don't have the interpersonal communication skills that they should have. I tell all my interns, look, if you learn 2 things from me, tell the truth, show up early, and leave late. And if they just do those things, they'll shine. Warren?
Well, I think, again, back to the conversation I had with our HR executive, she suggests that she's having to compromise on skills, accepting less skills, and maybe less hands-on experience and mechanical aptitude, but she's fighting the good fight that she will not compromise what it would be a cultural fit. And those soft skills are basically the things that would make the cultural fit. And I think that's what we need. You can't make up for bad actors no matter how skilled they are. Whether that we can do a better job through the school system and education to get more folks that have those good soft skills is a question. I know that there's one program out there that I think you would say was working on that, and that's Harper's Promise program to emphasize those kind of skills that they need to bring to the workforce, and hopefully those things will be successful. Again, long-term program, but we still need it.
Absolutely. We can stay a little bit late. It's 11:15 right now, which is technically the end, but we'd be glad to field questions for a few minutes. Is that okay? Any other further questions for those that want to stay a little bit?
I have a question for President Albrecht. You mentioned that you've engaged your industry people. You spend a lot of time at it. What do you ask them to do? They often ask me, tell me what you need me to do. What do you ask for me?
I ask for 5-year commitment. Nothing happens overnight, so you've got to stay with me on this. It takes time to retool a lab and to retool an instructor capacity. I ask for access to their best knowledge and information, so that's their R&D teams, because I want to know what's on their cutting edge. I ask for their supply chain. Who are they buying from, and why do they pick those people, and how can we become one of those supply chain partners? And I ask for their expertise in delivering the service. So that might be an internship, it might be a curriculum development, it might be advisory committee, it might be borrowing equipment, it might be donating equipment. So we try to do everything that we've talked about here today. It's a shared responsibility, 50-50. We're in if you're in, but we need to have all of this on the table. So don't just come in and say, I need a welder, because there are 7 different types of welders that you need. So be very specific and tell us what equipment and machine, and if we don't have it, can you help us get it? And we'll help provide some training for you.
Good answer.
And so far, I'll just tell you that I have not had anyone say they would not stay for the 5 years. They've all stayed for the entire, however many we're on now, Debbie, 8 years, right, that we've started this. And it's a continual effort, though. You have to really work hard to sustain it. We meet regularly with all of our business partners. We invite them to every event. We put them up front to showcase what the partnership means to them.
Do you ask them for a commitment to hire the students when they finish?
Yeah, we actually tell them, if you're looking for employees, the best way to find them is in the training programs that already exist. So be a part of the interview process, be a part of the screening process, and you get first shot at a lot of the graduates. We do ask them, though, let them graduate. So monitor through the whole program, make an offer if you want to, but let them graduate. And if you can, help support them to graduate. So whether it's funding or whether it's encouragement, and it's a really big, important part of our wraparound services. We maintain, I think this last year, 88% direct placement rate. In Debbie's programs, it's over 90%, 93% direct placement.
That's the last question.
All right, last question.
Do you formalize that relationship with a memorandum of understanding that can help you promote the program? Because as you mentioned before, it's jobs what recruits. If you have jobs at the end of the training, you will have clients. And in our practice, if we have a memorandum of understanding, some of them are really commitments, and others are at least saying, I will do my best. Any way of commitment that you can trust, that you can tell students there are jobs, good paying jobs, you will have recruited.
Right.
So
So you're absolutely right. We formalize it in writing. If it's a training agreement, there's a training contract. If it's a relationship building, transactional, there's an MOU that describes how the funding is going to be related. If it's a strategic partnership, it's engaged in the development of what the business plan is for that. If you ever had a chance to visit Gateway, you would see it because we make it very visible. Every place we can, we put their name on our walls. It highlights it, it reminds them, and that then becomes their training. Our goal is to make Gateway the training center for our local companies. So it's, rather than building out another training lab in your own business, you have one. It's a mile down the road, and it's yours to use. There's no cost for an employer to come in and use our facilities, conference facilities, classroom facilities, lab facilities. We only ask that you help us understand why you need that, and if we can provide a service through an instructor, through a wraparound support service, or a network that we have, we want to do that.
I'd like to, first of all, thank all of you for attending. I'd like to thank Marilyn and the people at High Tech and
for putting this together and allowing this to happen.
And lastly, I want to thank Warren Young, Brian Albrecht, and Peg Lee for their help.